presented to our group before, but something happened that day, diverted a lot of people to another issue. So I wanted him to have another chance to talk about what REHS does, because they are involved in just about not just about, in every aspect of this university. It's a very interesting presentation, so enjoy, and you'll have lots of time for questions after.
Sure. Well, thank you, Liz. Welcome. I think we did get more people this time than the last time. So I was asked to just talk about REHS, and I think most of you have dealt with us before, but we'll go over a quick oversight of what we do as a department. So it's going to be a 3-hour training. Just kidding, it's not. It's going to be 60 minutes or less. So what we're going to try to do is go over a high overview of what we do and how we do it. So that way we can fill in the dots later on with specific things that you may have questions on what our department is. Our department is a small department, and what we do is we service the whole university. That could be on the front lines with IP&O partners, to the point where we're working with research and major events, other groups that you may not have really associated with health and safety. And our job is, if we do our job well, basically nobody even knows we exist. Most of the time people find out about us because something occurred, something bad happened. And what we're trying to do is change that approach. We want to be involved in the beginning of either events, projects, or activities, or proposals, so that way we can try to estimate or anticipate what the problems are, so we can correct it before it becomes an issue. And what we try to do is we call that risk mitigation. And we work a lot with risk management. So most of you have dealt with risk management insurance for different aspects of recovery for losses or insurance. We provide risk management, all of the hazard assessments for them on particular processes and events at the university. So we work hand in hand with them, and we'll talk about that in a second. But our main focus in our mission is a couple things, right? We want to protect our environment, our employees, and our guests coming to campus. And our students are also part of that whole community. And when we talk about the community in itself, we include everybody as a stakeholder. We don't really separate a student from faculty, because the hazard is still the same for both of them. And when we look at that, we look at a big comprehensive approach, so that way we give our stakeholders an answer that included some of the other groups that they may have to deal with, so that way they're not being passed on to somebody else. So in our office, and most of you have called our office, you always see that there's somebody answering the phone, and we'll say that somebody will get back to you. We try to reduce the amount of time that we have you calling somebody else, unless we're referring you to another group, and we just say, hey, just say that Alex asked me to give you a call, can you help us out? And they may be able to figure out what's your needs and help you. This university is big, and if you haven't been here for a while, you can get lost easily. And in our department, we definitely have an aspect that we touch in every single department, one way or another. It can be from a simple indoor air quality complaints to assessing a process for a complex research activity that they want to do for a building. Now, when we talk about our services and we look at all the different things, I just can't add everything we do. It's kind of hard to itemize that. I mean, we were asked one time, can you itemize everything you do? It's impossible. We get random calls, the things that you would never have thought of. And I think Liz is interested in some of those stories that we have. Mm-hmm. We get some odd requests. I mean, even last week, we got a request for individuals who want to have cat shelters on campus. Who would have thought that would have been an issue? Well, it actually affected multiple IP&O departments, REPD, facilities. They all had concerns, and then our office got involved because we work with them, and we're going to help bridge the gap between all the other compliance organizations. Because we want to be able to give our university employees and staff, and even students, an opportunity to engage in what they want to do. We typically don't say no. We usually say, well, what do you want to do, and how can we get there safely? And that's how we usually provide services for all these departments. That's why a lot of departments call us with random calls, because we've helped them in the past, and they'll contact us again to see if we have an answer for them. And sometimes we don't have the answer, but we may know who does. And that creates a great partnership at the university. So we go from consultation all the time, every single department. Every person that calls us, we consider a stakeholder, regardless if it's a student or one of our own employees in IP&O. And if Orlando calls us, we're going to provide him the service because we know he has a need. We're going to provide that service that tries not to contradict advice from other compliance organizations. So what we try to do is keep that in mind, because nothing's worse than getting two contradictory answers from two different organizations. Even if it takes us the extra step to call the other group to make sure that we're on the same page, and then we'll give our consultation at the same time. And we try to provide that service. We provide a lot of education and training. We average well over 13,000 in-person trainings. Now they could be in multiple groups, and then when we count our online trainings that we do, it's over 20,000 trainings. And most of the trainings that we do are primarily compliance-based. Either because a regulatory requirement requires us to provide that training, or we include other components from other compliance organizations. So we include that in our training so they don't have to go to another group. For example, when we do our trainings for our research labs, we include some fire emergency services requirements, so that way they have a knowledge and experience of what they need to do, so that way they know they have to contact emergency services. For OEM, we'll cover some of their topics on evacuating a building when there's a fire alarm. We include suspicious activity reporting for REPD. So we think that if we have them there in the room, we might as well include some other topics. It's usually 1 or 2 slides, we talk about it, and it provides them a value-added service. So they're coming to our training for a while, 3 hours typically for laboratories, could be 2. And we do include other things. We do include a lot of things for facilities related to fume hood maintenance, so they know who to contact. We do a lot of compliance inspections. Our office doing the audits. We do observations, audits, inspections, depending on the program. Mostly is to maintain the compliance of the program that is established by the university for guidelines that we have, programs that the committees have approved, or policies the university enforces. The reason why we also do that is that way we're prepared for when we do get a compliance inspection from a federal or state agency. And we average over 1 or 2 compliance inspections a month. They can range from the DEP from New Jersey, Department of Environmental Protection, to the federal level, the Environmental Protection Agency, to POSH, which is a Public Employees Occupational Safety and Health. They're mostly covering us for workplace safety concerns, to the CDC, the Department of Health, all these other organizations we have a part in. Even the recent concerns with coronavirus. Our office is involved with the main committee to provide guidelines for our clinical care staff who's providing services, and also our environmental services group who's cleaning. So we try to bridge that gap so we can communicate. So if we need to provide training, we'll provide the training for our employees, because they're our employees. We don't take care of the patients, we take care of those who do take care of the patients. And that's our goal, is to reduce the injuries and illnesses to them too. Emergency response is a thing that we do out of necessity, not because we always love to, right? Because if you have an emergency response, something happened. Somebody got hurt, so we have a loss. It could be a fire, chemical, a major injury. And what we try to do is we try to mitigate the severity of the incident and return the building back into service to support business continuity. And we work hand in hand with emergency services, REPD, and OEM. So if you probably recall the fire a couple weeks ago with Cogen, we were there already preparing for contingencies if we lost the plant for heat, and we were working with utilities and facilities and other different groups, just to start planning that out. Because we can't wait for the building to go down to start planning. We might as well figure out what we have and what is the consequences. And we do this on behalf also of risk management. We do represent risk management in a lot of different activities on our hazard assessments. And the reason why we do that is because they will try to ensure the activity, the program, the research, to ensure that it's an acceptable risk that the university wants to take. And just because it has a risk doesn't mean that we can't do actions to mitigate the severity of it. And depending on what we come up with for procedures or with our consultation to them, what they should do, what they'll do is that risk management would accept that as a mitigation value to reduce the severity so they have an acceptable risk. This is why we do a lot of activities at the university that people start thinking, that sounds kind of dangerous. It's because we pre-vetted it. Again, we don't say no, we just say there's a better way to get there. There are some activities, somebody did want to bring an alligator in for petting. We thought that was a bad idea. So risk management completely concurred. But you'll be surprised what students want to bring on campus. And we do participate in a lot of different internal and exterior committees. Internal committees will range from university-based health and safety to being ex officio on other compliance groups. So we are voting members and ex officios on IACUC, which is for the animal care, IRB for human subject work. And we also lead different research committees for safety. For example, for drones. We have also involvement with the biosafety. We administer the biosafety committee for the university. So every activity that occurs in the university related to biological safety, and there's protocols and procedures, that comes to our office and our system that we created in-house with IT within IP&O to provide services for them to maintain their grants and compliance. So we provide those protocols. I think we have over 1,000 protocols in there right now, and every single research and ORED is tied into our systems. And ORED, which is right across the hall upstairs, utilizes our system extensively. So even though we're part of IP&O, we provide 100% of the health and safety services for ORED. So it's one of those complex situations where like, well, how much? I thought REHS only dealt with IP&O stakeholders. Actually, IP&O stakeholders probably the other 50%. So we're all over the state with within every single department. We even go down to every satellite facility. Every leased location outside of Rutgers that is leased by Rutgers Health is a site that we have compliance oversight related to the health and safety of the workers. So it gets pretty extensive. Now, we deal with a lot of other compliance organizations. And if you can see the big picture, the ones in red are IP&O based, right? Everybody knows emergency services and code. So I was just out there with Scott Luthman. We were talking about some other projects that his code release for TSOs or COs, which is temporary certificate of occupancy or certificate of occupancy, are contingent on our approvals of the health and safety of the labs or other facilities. So we work hand in hand because we have to be working together. Because at the end, if the building is put into service and then somebody comes in and gets hurt because of something that was obvious, then we missed the mark, because we want to be on the prevention side. OGC is the Office of General Counsel. We deal with them pretty frequently, sometimes to the point where I think actually I just saw Rob Brosner walk by. He waved at me because I think I see him every couple of weeks. So we deal with them, and they could be from labor disputes to depositions to pre-purchase of buildings with Deb McNally. We work with, and we do the environmental phase assessments. We do surveys for the buildings to ensure what our liabilities are. We also look at different contracts and purchases of different high-risk equipment or activities. And we work, they have a whole division just for research compliance, and we're part of that group. ORED, which is the Office of Research and Economic Development, we work with their grants and awards. So every researcher that gets a grant or an award from the federal government or anywhere else, we review their grant and then we provide an endorsement for compliance. If we review and they have no record of any type of protocol or activity, we have to review it and to determine if they can do it safely, so we can provide our endorsement so that they can sign off with the federal government that they're going to meet all the compliances. The IACUC and the IRB out of OGC. We also work with CMR, which is comparative medical resources. A lot of the facilities operations are used to working with them. These are where all the animal facilities are, the vets. We provide them also support for their ALAC inspections. We'll do the ventilation assessments for certain buildings. We provide their respiratory protection. We do their assessments. Every animal protocol that is submitted to the for research, our office also reviews for compliance and worker protection. Because just because they're working with animals, we still have a worker protection for the animal care staff. And then for our staff in the facilities operations, they're going to be going in there. So we review every single one of them. There's a lot of those also. On the Internal Review Board, which is also operated out of them, we review all of the human subject work that relates to below-board pathogens, or we also do a lot of other different types of gene therapy and other work related to patients, especially with CI&J. We're also involved with reviewing the protection for the staff who's administering the medication, administering the treatments. So, because there's also some risk activities there, and we do that. Also, they're taking blood samples, they're bringing it to the research location. How are they going to handle that? We handle all the university-based or affiliated drone operations, just like the one the facilities has. All those flight plans come to our office, we review it, and we ensure compliance. One, can it fly where they're proposing to fly? Do they have the proper pilot? And is it safe to do due to weather or restrictions? Just in New Jersey, we have a president that flies in pretty frequently. It's a big restriction to the whole state. So it has dampened the beautiful days out there when people want to fly. University Ethics and Compliance is another partner of ours. We partner with them pretty frequently. Every type of activity that has a risk, that has a institutional reputational concern, we also review with them. Same thing with the ADA. So we work with their ADA compliance officer, their research compliance officer, their athletics Title IX officer. They have different groups there that I work with every week. We actually have routine meetings so we can coalesce our compliance issues, so that way we're dealing with a principal investigator, which is a researcher, who's having compliance issues. We work with them so we all provide our information together, because we would like to avoid having a pylon, because nothing's worse than being hit by a compliance inspector today and then tomorrow every other one lines up and they feel like they're getting bashed in the head, and we're trying not to do that. We want to be supportive for researchers so they can comply, and we'll work with them so we can provide them a common unified message and provide them solutions. And every single time we do an inspection or we do an assessment, we provide solutions for our client so they can achieve compliance. We avoid having to, we're not in the business of finding the issue and then leaving them to resolve, because we know that this is a big university. They may not know all the resources that are out there. And at times we may already have the product or somebody who's already doing it, what they need to get done, and we'll have them work with and collaborate. We're doing that right now with one of our engineering departments, collaborating with SEBS, because they want to fly a drone underwater. SEBS has marine coastal property. Why are we going to go to somewhere we can't control? They're going to do it together, and we have a win-win. It's a great partnership. We love it. It provides us an easy access to make a call. It's nice to make a call and the people pick up your phone, especially when they see my name. Sometimes depends on the time of the night or the weekend. If they see my name on the phone, if it's on a weekend, they get scared. I'm not calling you to say hi in the weekend, just because we found something else out. Just like we have water leaks in pipe breaks. So we'll get involved with facilities on major breaks of due to water or other utility-based issues, because we have labs and we have animals and we have other things that our stakeholders may not be aware of. And what we end up providing a service for facilities a lot is that they may not know who the point of contact is for those groups. When we go to the lab and there's an issue related to water, we know who to contact because we were in the labs already. We have that contact. We know the chair. We know the dean. And when we give them a call and we give them an assessment that you may have to bring somebody in on Saturday night to take care of your lab, they will find somebody quickly because they know that we're calling them. So this coming from health and safety, they know that it's serious. And they appreciate that. They really appreciate that IP&O is reaching out to them to provide them insight, so that way Monday morning they're not surprised by the concern. And it's been working very well in the past few years now that we're all working together, and everybody's keeping each other informed. Even though if it's not my job to make a decision, I'm willing to give you advice on who you should call to make that easier for you. Because during an emergency, you have so many things going on, we'll take that burden off of your plate if we have to. We did that on Saturday. I'll call that person for you. You take care of what you need to take care of. I'll do that notification for you. So what we try to do is we break things down in health and safety to three things. A safety, a hazard, and a risk. And each one of them is what we utilize to figure out how do we protect or mitigate. So we have to identify first if there's a hazard. And these are things that affect everybody. There's hazards everywhere. You're in the parking lot, you're coming into the building, there's a hazard, right? You could be hit by a car, right? There's cars there. There's a hazard there. There's people driving those cars. So if you're on Livingston campus, you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of driving schools there. And then we have the risk. Now we there's times that we can affect the risk, and there's sometimes we can affect the hazard. And the way I kind of typically tell everybody is a hazard is something that's there, right? You have a shark in the water, it's a hazard, right? The risk is deciding to go swim with the shark. Right? You can adjust your risk by, maybe I'm just going to at the edge of the water. The sharks can't come that close, we hope, right? They don't have feet yet. Right? So we decide where we want to go. You do this all the time, right? I'm getting older, so years ago I was able to jump the last 2 steps and land well, and now the hazard's still there, but the risk of me landing incorrectly is going to hurt me a lot more. So we adjust that. We make decisions now that we wouldn't, that when I was 20 years old I would have done, right? There's probably a whole bunch of things like, yeah, I would have done that 20 years ago, not today. Because we're self-aware, and that's what we have to recognize the hazard. Because once we start recognizing the hazard, we can start now adjusting the risk, because risk to that hazard is based on the frequency and the severity. And we'll show you that when we talk about risk assessment. So we break things down to simple things, right? First thing is safety hazards. These are things that we all can control, right? Slippery floors, falls, guards on machines. These are everything that our IP&O groups are always working with. And these are safety hazards that can affect an employee. And they're more out there that we pass by all the time. And what we're trying to do when we do our trainings now, especially with custodians, mechanics, everything else, we try to instill that it's all of our job to take care of something. If we see something that's wet on the ground, well, maybe somebody else reported it. Well, that's an attitude that is actually becoming an issue because somebody else did not report it. So we have this moral hazard in our society where we expect somebody else did it. And as an IP&O division, and it's where we're trying to go, is we want to enable everybody to say, you know what, let me make the call. We don't care, we get a lot of calls. And RUPD has the same mode, right? If you have a suspicious activity, call RUPD. You think their dispatcher is going to be upset that 5 people called them? No, because if all 5 people decided that somebody else is going to do it, guess what? Nobody called. And we see this all the time. And it doesn't take much to pick up the phone. So when you hear the word, it's not my job, it kind of makes me cringe, because even if my job was to do this. Hey, Orlando, did you know that there's smoke coming out of your... Oh, no, I did not. Okay. I feel better. I tell my staff sometimes, I've been here working at Rutgers for 20 years, and every day I'm excited to come to work. Every day, I'm excited to come to work. Now, I may deal with difficult people during the day, right? That's we all have. But that difficult people doesn't make what the job is. And every day, if I was able to help somebody, and almost everybody in our office has the same attitude, we want to help. And even if it makes somebody smile, we got some. Because sometimes when we get calls, and some of you guys probably have the same similar departments, we never really get that many calls for somebody saying, thank you for all the work you guys done, right? Our calls are, it smells in our building, it's hot in our building, it's dangerous. All these, and these are calls we get. But as long as we provide them an answer, even if it's something that's out of our control, we were able to give help in the system, they smiled, we at least helped one person, right? You feel better? Yes. I did my job for today, I'm done. I'm just kidding. So, the other one are physical hazards. These are things that actually our work activities will cause a harm to somebody else. And that could be from fires, lasers in our labs, to temperature extremes. There's something that's involved with the environment or our activities that's affecting the site. We get involved with physical hazards all the time with IP&O, right? We're doing renovations, we're doing work. We're trying to improve the university, and that's what we want to do. Our job is to fix, maintain, support all these aspects to make sure that the university as a whole still operates. Because the majority of the people at Rutgers may not know that it takes every single one of you to do that job to work. They just notice when something may not work well, and they want to bring it up, right? And then our job is to, okay, we didn't see that, let's fix that, and we'll take care of it. That's the goal we want to do, but we have to be careful that everything we do to make the system turn does not create a physical hazard for somebody else. And this university is big, we operate 24 hours a day. Every activity we do may have a unknown consequence, and these are things that we want to catch in our pre-planning. How do we pre-plan for a project knowing that we may have an anticipated problem in the future. Some of them are pretty easy, right? We're never going to start a project on Friday night, especially during Rutgers Day, right? Because it never goes well. Right? And for us, as we always tell them, don't start something on a Friday night because we know it's going to be a mess. And that's just, we say that as a joke, but we all know that Friday at 5 o'clock you get that call. Like, what were you guys planning? Oh, we didn't think, we thought it was going to be, yeah, it's great that we don't have a lot of people here. The problem is we don't have a lot of responders either. And everybody's gone home. The biological hazards, we deal with this as a whole, mostly on our research buildings, but also for our patient care. We have a lot of our employees who work in our environmental services group who are taking care of our clinics, our health centers, our student housing, and every once in a while they'll encounter an injury or somebody had to get cut or hurt and they basically will bleed and they have to go and clean it up. And we provide our trainings for that. We also work with again, things end up in our own. So we handle the wildlife issues at the university for some odd reason. So if there's bats incidents, we have to make sure that individuals are taken care of for the bats. We also take care of the deer. So we have an overpopulation of deer, and it's causing harm for the environment, but also potential for motor vehicle and animal contact, which has injured already people. So we try to work on how do we minimize that. The chemical hazards is what most people think we do, right, working in the labs. And when we work with the labs on the chemical hazards, those are things that we know and they're trained to handle. But facilities, operations, and utility utilizes a lot of chemicals also in higher quantities. How do you think all the boiler treatment plants work? They work off chemicals for treating the systems to make sure that doesn't corrode. Our cooling towers utilizes chemicals also to ensure that we don't have Legionnaires. So every system that we do for a preventative measure also requires some chemical use. And we provide the training and support for those individual groups. At times we deal with the removal of contaminants. We may have to clear out a tank with oils because the facilities or utility doesn't need it anymore. We're doing a demolition of a building or renovation. We'll be taking a lead on the removal of the asbestos. We manage the contractor. If it deals with lead-based paint, we'll work with the different departments on ensuring that they follow the proper paint removal protocols. We provide the advice. We don't remove the paint. We provide them how to do it properly. And this is done through training and education, and I think that recently they just did their RP again. So they have that for working with, especially on housing units. Then we have ergonomic issues. This affects mostly on the office side of the house. Proper chairs, setup. We'll work with facilities on determining what the requirements are for furniture to ensure they have proper ergonomics. I think you had a lecture on ergonomics before, and that portion of it we deal with. If we buy the equipment correctly in the beginning, then they'll have less ergonomic issues later on. And ergonomics is basically we're fitting the work site or work environment to the employee. So that way there's adjustability. We deal with this on employees when they come into a workstation that was not properly set up. They had the proper equipment, they just weren't properly set up. And our office will go out there and provide consultation on how to properly set that up for them. On occasion, we may see that the chair is not functioning correctly, because sometimes it breaks. Then there's some responsibility of getting a new chair or workstation. We've been seeing a lot of sit stands requests. A lot of locations didn't have sit stands. They're perfectly fine. We just recommend that if they're going to get one, they fits their location. So we'll do some assessments. We do have a ergonomic lab in our office so people can come and see different types of setups. It provides them an opportunity to sit down and feel it before they buy it. Nothing is worse than having to send it back if it doesn't work. We don't have all the manufacturers, but we have a good representative amount. And we have one here in our Livingston campus, and we have one in our Newark office. And we see that a lot. We also see ergonomic issues related to individuals who have prior either disability or prior injuries and they want to return to work. We may do workplace assessments to work with occupational health. Occupational health reports through risk management insurance. So that's another partner that we work with exclusively every single day. Every single day we get multiple accident reports. Every accident that occurs at the university for an employee gets reported on the online system. that online system is managed by us. So we are responsible for the accident prevention program for the university, and risk management and occupational health are involved with this. And I know we did some training for employee services here on the different groups of risk management and how our involvement is related to them. So for example, an accident comes in to our system, we already start the investigation. Risk management starts the workers' comp portion. Occupational health handles the medical care of that injured employee. And at the end, we're trying to do is get the employee back to work faster in a way that they can do their job safely. And then our portion is to see how can we prevent this from occurring again. Because we don't look for fault. That's not our job. Our job is to find the symptoms and the causes. Because once we find a cause of it, we want to prevent it from happening again. We never go into any investigation saying that it's somebody else's fault or it's employee's fault. There's a management symptom, and that's what we're trying to establish. Where in the management cycle was that missing gap that created the situation that this incident occurred. And then we can, if that could be as simple as training to a supervisor or to an employee. So during the process, what we try to do, there's a whole bunch of different hazards and locations and areas at the university where we have common hazards. It could be from the planning and design phase, and we're going to talk about that because we really focus a lot on prevention through design, down to the general maintenance, renovations, and even down to entertainment and events. You'd be surprised how many events the university has. Oh, is that a message for me? And we're there too. Every major university, like Rutgers Day, commencement, our office is there. Football, our office is there. What we try to do is we do our pre-inspections to prevent things to occur before the spectators come, and during the event, in case something does occur, we're responding, and then after. So it's a long day, but our staff, we work through the games. We're in a command post, and we also facilitate the activities for emergency services, so we're other eyes and ears for them, and also for OEM. And these are things that most people don't see. Oh, REHS. Sometimes you guys are surprised when you see me there. What are you guys doing here? Yeah, if it goes well, just keep it safe, because that means we can sit down on a chair and just watch all game, but it never happens. But so we try to get into the life cycle. And our life cycle is, if we get it up front early in the phase when we start thinking about the activity, this is what we want to do. This is when we do, this is a crucial time. Because this is when we can start doing our identify the hazards and then do an assessment. Once we find the assessment, we can start controlling it. It could be a ventilation system. It could be a substitution. Say, maybe we don't want to use that. And once we implement the controls, we have to go back and review it. Because not every control is perfect. We may find out that, it didn't work very well. But we lowered the hazard, but it still didn't work well. And a perfect example is our fume hoods. We install them, we certify them, they go into the building, they're working fine. We only check them once a year. But in between that once a year, it fails. And when it fails, say the fan or something does not work, or the variable air volume shuts down on that particular fume hood, they need to report it to somebody. So now IP&O is out of that. Now it's the user portion of that cycle. They need to report that there's an issue so facilities knows to go fix it. Because nothing's perfect, right? Things fail. The other portion is preventative maintenance, and that's part of the whole life cycle. So when we look at every hazard, we separate them to two different things. How bad is it, and how likely it is to occur? Every approach for risk assessment is done the same way. So just because it looks real bad, and then you find out, well, we don't do it, right? I worried about Ebola. Remember that a couple years ago? Oh, Ebola. Okay, that's very severe. But then you come back to Rutgers, we don't do it. We don't do that work. So guess what? We don't do the work, it's an acceptable risk. If we did work with Ebola, then our likelihood would increase. The severity would have not changed. So then if that increases, then we would have to work on the severity. How do we reduce it? That's why we start putting BL3 instead of BL4. We don't have BL4s, by the way, just BL3s. We include our facilities to handle this. This is why when we look at our assessments for laboratories and we want to build a building, we always ask the end user, what is the program of this building? What do they want to do in this building? Because if you don't tell us what you want to do and we don't design for it and build it, it restricts you from doing it later on. And then it's going to cost them more money later on because they want to do it. So when we look at the hierarchy and controls, we always look at how do we eliminate it. If we can eliminate it and substitute it, then we can minimize the rest. We don't want to rely on what we call PPE, which is personal protective equipment. Personal protective equipment is basically the same as in your car. You have an airbag and a seatbelt. When do you know your airbag and your seatbelt works?
When you crash.
When you crash, right? And you better hope it works, right? And is it foolproof? Can you still get severely injured? Absolutely. So that's where PPE is the least protective. We utilize that in the event everything else did not work. It's the last line of defense. We don't want to start out with that. Because imagine you getting in your car, you put on your seatbelt and drive away. You have no brakes, no controls on the road, but I have my seatbelt. I'm okay. This is what we're trying to get away from, that mentality. I got my safety glasses on, I can do whatever I want. Okay, but we can control it. We don't like caution tape at the university. It doesn't work. We call that the finish line. As soon as you put it on, there's going to be somebody who's going to go right through. They just want to be the first person to cut the tape. And they'll go right into your sites and everything else. It doesn't affects mostly the facilities and utilities work when they have temporary work. It's tough. If it's pretty planned out, we adjust it. So when we talk about risk, these are things that we try to do. We work with risk management on this. How do we control that risk? And there's a couple things, right? Most people just call REHS, and that's fine. They can call us. We'll do the rest. But we'll work with you on determining the different types of strategies. So risk transfer is basically when we hire a specialty company to do that work. We don't have the talent, the skills, or the ability, or the resources to do the job. So we will hire an outside group to do that job for us. These are the high-risk activities. This is what they do. They're specialized. They're trained for it. So why are we going to go through the whole expense of training one employee to do that, and if the employee leaves, we can't do it anymore? Risk avoidance. There's people that do that. They just don't want to do anything. Everything's too dangerous. I don't want to do it. We encounter that every so often. The other one is risk reduction. We talked about through the hierarchy controls. Can we lessen the frequency and severity? And then assumption, which basically means we know there's going to be an inherent risk with this. We're still going to do the activity. For example, if somebody's going to make food and somebody has an allergy to certain food, they're not going to stop the activity because a few people may have that allergy. Like for example, the stadium. The stadium also sells products that may have peanuts. So there was a whole conversation, well, should we eliminate all peanuts? Well, it's like, well, there's going to be some risk here. So just post the signs that says products may have peanuts to make patrons aware that they were buying something, than having to restrict a whole other food category. So these are things that has to be decided by with risk management, and they take the assumption of that risk. And then there's risk ignorance, which we refuse to do now. It was like that like decades ago, where people were taking risk, unnecessary risk. Now that more people are aware that there's better ways of doing things, and there's resources at the university, they're not doing it. For example, we have student groups that would like to, set up signs and everywhere else, and they put them up. They used to put them up. They used to go up there and just put, and you're like, well, how did they get up there? Now we're like, no. There's better ways. You can contract with facilities and errands group, and they'll put the signs up for you because they have access to the aerial lifts. This is what we want them to do. Right? Just don't ignore the risk. It's still there. Transfer that risk to Aaron Rath's group to handle. This is how those events groups start working. They provide a lot of good resources. Another way of looking at it is, for those who are visual learners, risk avoidance means basically, say this is a diving board, because this is good, right? Everybody has this, right? When I was a kid, I used to get on the high one. Now I go up there, my knees buckle, yeah. So I'm like, I'm not jumping. Okay. Risk acceptance thing, that's the person who goes to the top and jumps. We all have that friend. Don't just take that leap. Risk mitigation, I'm going to start off at the lower level to make sure I'm able to land right, because if I land wrong, I'm going to give myself a what do they call that, pink bellies? Belly flops, yeah. And then, this is what I like to utilize a lot. Let's hire somebody, right? Hey, you do it. You jump. Okay? That's the Mikey leader, right? You jump, which is okay. There's certain groups at the university are better trained to do it, right? And we utilize this with the high voltage. Our mechanic will not work on high voltage, and they shouldn't. They'll hire a third party or John Russo's group, the high voltage guys on the utilities, because that's what they're trained for. They have the equipment for it. And our goal here is to, especially with facilities and on the project management side, is to get early on the project itself, the conception of the project. Somebody had a bright idea. Usually it's a stakeholder. They're not aware of the whole process, how to get something built. IP&O does. IP&O can get your stuff built. Right? The goal is on time and on budget. But we can get your stuff built because we know that during the building process, there's going to be a lot of changes that come in, and that may change the budget on the stakeholder, and they're going to have to make a decision. And when they make these decisions sometimes on where they can cut the cost, sometimes that cutting of the cost that they're requesting has a downstream effect on the original programming they wanted to do. So they say the ventilation system's costing too much. Can you trim it down? We don't want that much ventilation. And then when we get involved, we're like, do know if you take out the ventilation, you can't do the research you want to do. Oh, I didn't know that. Because they don't know that portion of it. So what we have to give them as a whole division is the complete answer so they can make an informed decision. Sometimes cutting a corner for money ends up costing a lot more money later on, especially with incompatible components, something that cannot be maintained. Oh, we found this cheaper. Yeah, found it cheaper, but you don't find parts for it. So these are things that are effective. So what we try to do is try to get up early. Because if we design things up early, it's going to be a lot easier on a retrofit. Because if we have to retrofit something that's not designed originally for, it's going to cost a lot more money. And it's pretty impressive the amount of cost involved with just running a new duct for a fume hood, when they could have done it when all the walls were open. Because now to run a new duct, you're going to have to impact all these other areas. And then the other portion is the elimination. How do we get rid of it? Can you imagine 50, 60 years, somebody would have had the foresight to say, you know what? We don't know if asbestos is bad for us yet, because that time they didn't know. But we don't want to put it in building products. You know how much money we'll be saving now? But at that time, hindsight's a lot easier. But there's no way to do it, right? Lead paint. Can you imagine they'd never put lead paint in paint? It would be so much easier to paint, because now you don't have to worry about it. But the problem with our society is that we're basing things on today's knowledge when they did not know back then. We do this with refrigerant. You can't replace certain refrigerants because you can't buy it anymore. So what do? You have to retrofit the whole piece of equipment. And so those are difficult, but other ones are pretty obvious. We have things in our design standard which IP&O develops and utilizes. And this is what we utilize because these are the kind of the game rules that we have, knowing that this is what we want to buy for the university and how we want to build it, to make it easier to maintain and later on add things to it. The reason why we want to get included, because even though it sounds like a lot of money to implement safety or other components into it, it costs tenfold later on to add it to a system. And our researchers are getting smarter at this. So they know if they need 2 fume hoods, they may ask for 3, because they know research gets it more advanced. Now they have to find the funding. Don't get me wrong, but they're getting better at it, and which is great. So when we get caught up here, you can see that it's kind of inversely proportional, right? Costs less, but it costs a lot more later on. It's easier to put in the front than putting it on in the end. So we want to be on this side of the chart. The other roles we do is we do a lot of interpretation of regulations. We work with Scott Luthman, Bill Scott, Ethics and Compliance, our Economic and Office of Economic Research, because they are basically also have their compliance officers in there. And what we try to do is try to see where the regulations diverge, and if we can find a sweet spot there so we can let our stakeholders know if you do this, you will comply with all these other regulations. If you do it this way, you'll only comply with half, which means that you may comply with us, but then emergency services later on comes and cites them for a fire code violation. So we try to assist all the departments with that. The other one is we are very involved with consensus standards. So a lot of the codes that are out there are based on consensus standards in industry. So we may have the ANSI standards, ASTMs, NFPA standards. And our office, some of our staff members sit on some of the international and national consensus standards. So we are trying to influence standards so that way it not just benefits us, but benefits our industry. And with that, we also provide comments to standards. So even if we don't sit on it, every standard has an opportunity for people who are stakeholders to comment on, and we will comment on something that we think may be detrimental for the university when we find out about it, right? And the way we find out is because we're all part of different trade associations. So we have members in our office who are leaders, presidents, advisory boards on different societies to provide an avenue to get that information so we know that there's upcoming proposed rulemaking so we can comment and protect the university. And we work along with Office of General Counsel to establish our platform. How do we want to challenge that interpretation? We do hazardous communication. We do this along with occupational health and student health, where we will work with communicating a specific concern. It could be related to norovirus that we had in the housing years ago, to the meningitis clinics that we had last year, and we had also 3 years ago. Yeah, so we were involved with the meningitis. We provided all the resources as in manpower and technology to expedite the vaccination process for students. Yeah. We didn't give the shots, we just got people to your shots faster. So that's what we did. Our job is to move people, and somehow our office became part of that responsibility because of the university emergency operations plans from 10 years ago for pandemics. So we are part of the pandemic plan. So we mobilize under the health portion for getting people through a system, because we know what the hazards are, we know how to communicate the hazards, and we work well with student health and also with occupational health. So we're there. The other one is we get rid of all of the hazardous waste for the university. Chemical, biological, radiological, and also we assist with controlled substances. And we also we assist with animal carcasses, depending on if they were contaminated or not. So you name the stuff that has to get rid of, our office manages that whole process. So we're constantly getting calls on different novel things. Hey, how do I get rid of this? Same thing with surplus. Surplus will contact us, and we have to clear certain things before they sell it or get rid of it. So we'll work hand in hand with facilities on, say, for example, a refrigerator that's utilized in a laboratory, multiple groups in IP&O. We clear it as it's been cleaned by the lab. If it's radioactive, we survey it, make sure there's no radioactive, and then facilities takes the refrigerant out, and then material services disposes of it to recycle. So just that one activity touched at least 3 different groups in IP&O. And there's probably other groups too, but just so and that's how the process works. We talked about the assessments, and we also do assessments when we buy buildings, or we're going to be demolishing building. We'll go in there, do a last cursory before we buy it. Hopefully we get it before they buy it. And then before we occupy it. And then after it's not occupied, before it's demolished or renovated. And we do that for various things. It could be from a lab that utilizing radioactive material. We'll go in there and make sure everything's clean. If we're buying a building, does it have underground storage tanks? Does any ground contamination? Our office gets involved with that. And we work with Deb McNally's office, another IP&O group. We do the risk mitigations as we discussed, plan reviews when we get them. Sometimes there's a renovation goes real quickly. It's a small office space. We may not get involved with that as much unless there's asbestos or other contaminants. To a large building like chemistry, where we're heavily involved due to the ventilation systems and the different types of complexities of research are going in there. So we'll get involved with that. We also deal with random issues. So every month or twice a month, depending, I meet with the other compliance groups at the university, and we sit down and we talk about things that are popping up, trends. And then it's funny because when they said the trend, we all know who the player is because we've all had to deal with that person. This is our opportunity, hey, can we all give the same answer to provide that stakeholder the right information? It could be information from the chancellor level. It could be something from a local level on a graduate student. They want to do a specific research. We all talk about the different aspects of it. We get involved with the student affairs because they have a lot of activities that they want to do. They want to do some cool things. Those inflatable rides that everybody sees, right? There's a whole bunch of other compliance issues with this. So we send out a letter every year to all the student activity groups from Res Life, Student Life, on all the campuses, reminding them of the obligation of the companies they're hiring to ensure they have it all registered, safety inspected, because we don't want to have what we see in the news, a bounty ride floating up in the air and then injuring or seriously injuring a student or a spectator or a kid, right, during football. So we provide those services. We work with emergency services, so that way when both of our officers are going out there, we're checking for the same thing. Same thing with generators running on. So these are all interesting, crazy things, right? Then we have safety briefings. We've assisted even RUPD with safety briefings so they can actually do their active shooters. Those active shooter events that were large, I don't know if anybody went through them, you definitely should participate in them when RUPD runs them. We provide the safety briefing and also the safety officers for those events, especially on the large ones. The smaller ones they can handle, the larger ones, because they don't have enough personnel, will handle the safety components for that major event. And it's a good opportunity for our staff to interact with the occupants and provide the service to our other IPNL partners. So our role for the occupants, we're looking at their safety. We also try to work with safety plans for contractors. So contractors, when they're working for project management, we request that they submit a safety plan. And in that safety plan is their site specific, what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. Now our office is not approving them, we're reviewing them for compliance. And then we'll hold those contractors to those plans. Because if they're telling us they're going to do it a certain way and we get a complaint from an indoor air quality or a hazard, we're going to go there and find out they're not following it. And the reason why we're doing it is because we're trying to put the responsibility back on those contractors to do their job safely at Rutgers. Because for a time, they thought we were a state agency, we didn't have any rules. But that's not the fact, we still have to follow regulations. And we're going to hold them to those regulations too. Job hazard analysis, safety analysis, depending on what they're going to do, we review those processes with them so we can identify what they need. We talked about abatement and training. We want to get to the point where we're enabling supervisors to do their job. And we are contacted for consultation because we don't have a lot of personnel, and if we go to a site and we find something, we're always going to ask, well, didn't you guys know this is going to happen? And usually they did. They just thought it was going to be a quick job, and that's quick jobs is what ends up being a long job because it creates some other downstream effects that they may not be aware of. So what we try to do is we try to work with them to make ethical decisions, because sometimes they may not be 100% secure, but is that risk that they're going to do something we want to assume? And if it's something that we're accepting, that's fine, as long as you put all these other mitigation factors in. And once we enable the front line, that's where it becomes trust. People see trust there, because that trust is important. If you have a supervisor that the employees are trusting that they're doing the right thing, those employees are going to reciprocate and do things safely and bring things up. And that's the levels we want to get to. Because our expectation for all of these different groups, even in IPNO and outside, is that we try to communicate those potential hazards. It may not be the answer you want to hear. Well, again, we're trying to come up with a solution for it. And basically develop skills and knowledge. Sometimes what we find out is, it's not that you were ignoring the safety concern, you just weren't able to recognize it. And if we do our job well, we're hoping that we can train different groups to recognize or anticipate problems or hazards in their specific arena. If I put you into a laboratory, you may not recognize all the hazards in the laboratory. But same thing, if I put somebody from the laboratory into a utilities operation, they're not going to recognize those either. So when we bring employees from different groups, we have to work with them and find out what their fundamental knowledge is and then build upon it. Because everybody has some knowledge. It may not be to the level that you are assuming they have it. And then you're going to have those individuals that know a lot. Well, then encourage that, because they're the ones who are going to take the lead on different projects for you. We have staff that excel in their subject matter. So why am I going to tell them what to do? I want them to tell me what I need to do. They're the subject matter experts. My job is just to modify what they're communicating to make sure it's consistent with all the other units at the university, right? Because they're experts in their skill, but they may not know how the whole university operates. And that's the biggest issue we have, right? We work in this big universe. It's not even a university anymore, it's a universe. With all these little planets, each one having different gravitational pulls that's affecting each other, but they're not recognizing that if they do something, it pushes on something else. And then why are we going to kick the can down the road? If we can take care of it now and involve them, it works out. Because the culture of safety is what we're trying to get to. That culture of safety ends up having benefits. And those benefits are things that will be long lasting. Because once you have that culture of safety, almost everything becomes secondhand. We do this all the time, right? We want the very. So if there's something, if there's a cup on the floor right outside, what should be our action? What do you think our action should be? Pick it up, right? Mm-hmm. Right? It's not. We shouldn't think of certain jobs to be beneath us. Maybe the custodian just missed it, or somebody just threw it, bounced out of the can. It happens. Pick it up. Because if we see cups and it stays there, the next day there's going to be more than one cup. Right? And we see this a lot in our urban environments. That's what they say, the broken windows. It works the same in health and safety. If they see people care, this is why if you go to Johnson & Johnson, these are like the things that we want to aspire to. Everything they think about what the consequences are. And everybody, if you go there, people take care of things. And we do it here too. Problem is there's some other individuals at the university that may not know that that's the model we want to follow. They're still stuck in that moral hazard where we're saying it's somebody else's job. Okay? So I teach a class and for students. And at the end of the class, I go and I erase the board. So why do you think I erase the board? Because for me, that's one less task that custodian has to do that night. And they're doing all the classrooms at circa 10 o'clock at night. I'll erase it. I can't wash it, but I can erase it. That's one less step they have to do. Because I'm thinking about our employees, right? And same thing, there's garbage, even in our realm, I'll pick it up, put it in the garbage. That's one less task our grounds guy has to do. Because there's so much other stuff they have to do. So we want to get to the point where we want to have that culture because it increases productivity. And we're going to get there. I'm always optimistic. I think I get blamed for being too optimistic all the time. But I think we will get there. What we're trying to do now is we have annual safety day. I think August is our next one. And we're going to have it on that week. We'll register the program and we'll do something. And this year I think it's going to work great. You know why? Because we have this new STARS program that we're trying to push out. And we have over 100 IPNO members going to the program right now. At the end, they're going to have credentials if they take the test and pass it, and it shows that they have a commitment towards safety. And this is going to get to the point where these individuals, hopefully in August, we could do another celebration with them because they all have things that they should do to maintain their certification. And Safety Day is going to be, Safe and Sound Week is going to be one of them. Now, the STARS program is a collaboration between Rutgers, primarily in IPNO, and the Division of Facilities, the Facilities Group. And what we do is we're training them, providing them a minimum of 42 hours of health and safety training. They get management leadership skills out of how to implement safety, and they get an OSHA 30-hour construction card. So that way, if they end up not taking the exam or passing the exam, because the exam that they're going to take is done at a testing center, they still come out with a 30-hour, which makes them still marketable. So even if they do not stay at Rutgers, they go somewhere else, they leave with a credential. If they decide to stay at Rutgers, we have somebody leading with credentials. And this is what we want to do. So we're not afraid to invest in our employees to get them to the next level because it's not a waste of effort for us. Because for any little thing that they learn, they're going to implement that to help lead their employees. And these certifications are internationally known. Large corporations are out there that have them. We will be the first university in the country and the first public entity to have a significant amount of individuals certified, which is an excellent thing for Rutgers. We're going to beat the Big Tens in something. Maybe not on the field, but we're definitely going to do it on the ground, right? And this is what we want to do. We provide them a whole bunch of right now they're in over 50, they're halfway done already, so which is great. They'll be done by April, and they'll be qualifying for their exams, so they can start taking their exams, hopefully soon after, and then we can start having the celebration. The Board of Certified Safety Professionals are so excited about this. They're actually going to come to Rutgers once we have a significant amount of individuals credentialed, and have a news bulletin and blast it out, which is nice.
Great.
So this is going to be good for everybody. Right now it's with the groups under John Shulak, because he jumped on this commitment and he's asking all of us to commit to this. Hopefully we'll be able to expand this to other groups. But we have to first pass this group to see how it went so we can adjust and learn, right? Because just like any other learning process, especially with some training objectives, we have to make sure that the training objectives met our goal and then adjust that accordingly. So this is good. It's going to be great. Everybody's going to get a 30-hour, either in general industry or construction, which is going to be huge opportunity for individuals who have this and they decide later on they want to leave Rutgers. Again, we want to keep them, but if they decide, this is giving them a competitive advantage over others. All the different groups in university facilities are involved, even our staff members. We have other partners that are assisting us, risk management, public safety. Even though they're in IPNO also, they're actually providing some of their portions that may be a health and safety topic. For example, emergency action plans, emergency response, fire prevention, and so we include all these different groups. And the School of Public Health, who's assisting us because they're going to help. So when I submit everybody's name, they're going to help. I'm going to work with them to get everybody's certificates in the most affordable way. So they're pretty helpful. We're working with them pretty closely. Well, thank you.
Very good.
Hopefully it got in time.
Any questions?
Do you help with funding when you find a violation? Like in the lab or something, that you help them out with trying to get the resource?
We provide them assistance in finding.
Grant funding, and a lot of times they don't know.
Yeah. So what we've done for so every time there's a laboratory is being decommissioned, we try to go in there and find things that most other labs need, like eye washes and stuff like that, and we try to have them that saved. And then what we do is for a group that needs a certain, like a flammable storage cabinet, happens all the time. A group needs one, and we have a renovation and say, well, I know where we can get one, and we talk to the lab. Yeah, we're getting rid of it. Then they transfer it over to that group. Done. It saved them a lot of money, at least $2,000 there. We've done that with cylinder straps for cylinders. Lab is getting rid of. They get rid of all the cylinder straps. We'll put them in a box, and we give them out to the different labs that need them. So we're upcycling, and we don't mind doing that. The problem is we don't have a lot of space and resources to keep them. But once we see something, we try to upcycle that to somebody else. Especially for the non, it's almost like, everybody heard of in that research, you have in football and basketball, the revenue generating teams and then the non-revenue generating. Research is the same way. You have the revenue generating research groups that have money and they always updating their labs. Then you have the non-revenue generating labs, like teaching labs and other things that they're not making money from grants, they're making money off student fees. And if we can find them ways to get money, things they don't have to buy. Same thing with unused chemicals. We've gotten rid of syringes for certain animal care that are expired, and then we give those syringes to School of Nursing or health practices so they can utilize them for the nurses to practice how to provide utilizing sharps and needles. So it's a win-win for everybody, and we love being that bridge. And it doesn't always work out well because sometimes timing doesn't line up right. But it's a nice way of having it's almost like a free cycle, right? What do you use, Facebook or we don't call ourselves Craigslist because that's not it. You find too many bad things in Craigslist, but we try to help out all these suppliers. Does that help you answer your question?
Yeah,
Yes. Okay. Any other questions?
No other questions? Okay, Alex, thank you.
Wow.
Very comprehensive.
All right, good. Well, thank you.
Appreciate it.